Hi, I'm Stephanie Wang-Breal, the filmmaker behind the documentary Wo I Ni Mommy, and you're watching channel APA.com. My film is a documentary about a little girl named Faith, also known as Feng Shui-yong, who was adopted when she was 8 years old from Guangzhou, China, by the Sadowski family of Long Island, New York. And it's about sort of the whole transformation that Faith undergoes from being, an orphan living in China to becoming this Chinese American girl living in America. It's about Chinese adoption. It's about family. It's about parenting. It's about identity. It's about being Chinese in America. It's about all of these things. Well, everyone's asking me, are you adopted? Why are you interested in adoption? What's your connection to adoption? And I have no connection to adoption. I mean, I was really interested in this, making a documentary on Chinese adoption from a cultural perspective. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where there's a very small Chinese community. And so I, had a lot of difficulty identifying as Chinese American. And I was wondering when I started seeing all these adopted girls growing up in New York, what it was like for them to grow up Chinese in America, since it was going to be very different from my own experience. Yet there are going to be some similarities, I think. Through the research and development and exploration of this story, I've learned so much. Well, when I was doing my interviews and research for the project, I spoke to so many parents and so many families and so many kids as well. And I realized, the parents have so much to say, and it's great. They're really involved, and they really have good intentions behind their questions and their thoughts. But the kids didn't have as much to say. They don't remember that much from the adoption. And they were also just at a point in their lives where they're just starting to think about these bigger issues, because most of them are around 15, 16, the oldest girls. So I realized that, in order to really get the kids' perspective, I really need to find a family who's going to be adopting an older child. And that's the only way I'm going to be able to get an idea of what it feels like for the kid. And so and that was really important to me because there's so much out there from the parents, but there's not as much out there from from the child's perspective. There are a lot of moments where you're just not sure if you're going to be able to do it, just from a financial perspective, because this documentary took 3 years' time to do, and it was self-funded at the beginning, and then after, compiling a certain amount of footage, I was able to raise money through a trailer and grant writing. Um, so that process in itself is just, you think you're doing something, but you're not. There's no backing behind you, no support, so it doesn't feel like you're doing something. So that's one aspect to the difficulty in making the story. Then the whole other aspect is the whole storytelling itself, like you get so involved in the family, and you get so involved in, I was so involved in Faith's life and in her well-being, and you sort of start to get worried, like, am I a filmmaker, or am I just, part of this family? And when you do documentary verite, particularly, I think that you do become part of that family, or part of that, you become part of their lives. It's just, you're there all the time. It's just a role that I think is a natural role for you to play. I've been working in film for a long time. I'm not necessarily like independent film. I've been working in production. I've been working for news, media, MTV, UNICEF, and television, like producing pieces for different television cable networks. But I've always wanted to make this documentary, and I want to continue making more documentaries. For me, documentary is an art form that is just so powerful, because it speaks the truth, and it brings you into a society, into a family, into a culture that really brings you there that you can't get from, fiction, from TV. It takes you into a story in such a different way. Well, for now, the cameras are off with Faith because I feel like, she's 11 years old and she needs to continue living her life without the cameras. But, if she ever wants me to have a camera on her, I will. And I hope down the road if she expresses an interest in continuing the story, I hope to teach her to start telling her own story and to help her make that story happen. But I don't want to be the only person involved in it. I want it to be a collaborative process, or just her and me just sort of guiding or mentoring her. From the day that we met, I kept most of that stuff in because it was so, incremental to establish her life and who she was in China, so that we could really do a comparison and get an idea of, where she came from and who she's going to become. So I kept a lot of that stuff in. I tried to keep everything that I got from her in. That was my main thing, is just to let her voice be heard. So that was sort of my guiding principle, I guess. Well, I think that, one important thing about, keeping a child's language is that not only can they speak their native language, their birth language, but also that language helps them maintain memories. I think certain memories are linked to the language that you use. So I think that, watching that scene and filming that scene, I cried. I knew that she had lost her language, and I know that deep down inside it's there. It's just sort of being locked away and tucked away for the moment. I think that, I know Donna and Jeff are working every day with her to make her realize that it's okay to speak Chinese and that it's good, and that she shouldn't try to forget it, that she shouldn't try to just put it away. But I think that, she is 11 years old and she does not want to be different. And I think that every kid who comes from, who's a first generation or an immigrant, just wants to erase all those things about them that make them different. And that's one thing that I hope other immigrant communities come to see the film, because I think that their children are going through the same thing, even though they're not adopted. So, for those of you who haven't seen my film, I'd love to share my film with you on August 31st at 10 p.m. You can catch it on POV, PBS's award-winning documentary program. For those of you who are interested in seeing my film, Wa Ai Ni Mommy, you can check it out on August 31st at 10 p.m. on POV. My film is going to be the first in a trilogy series that POV is airing this fall. There are going to be 2 other adoption films. One is Off and Running by Nicole Opper. If you haven't seen it, you definitely need to check it out, as well as the amazing Deanne Bourchier-Liem's film, In the Matter of Cha Jung-hee, a follow-up to her first personal documentary, First Person Plural, an amazing, amazing documentary as well. So I'm very excited to be part of this adoption trilogy.